The Cold Agreement. The conference room on the 42nd floor felt more like an operating theater than a place for human conversation. Everything was steel and glass, reflecting Damien Blackwell's face back at him in cold, perfect angles. He adjusted his Patek Philippe watch and reviewed the contract one final time before his attorney, Marcus Chen, ushered in the candidate. Holly Bennett entered like a sparrow in a cage of hawks. Her second-hand coat was still damp from the November rain, and she clutched a worn purse against her stomach as if it could shield her from the overwhelming luxury surrounding her. Damien noticed her hands first. Rough, reddened from years of work, nothing like the manicured fingers of women in his usual circles. "Miss Bennett, please sit," he said without rising. Courtesy was inefficient. Holly perched on the edge of the leather chair, her eyes darting between Damien and Marcus. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 26, with honey-colored hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. There was something unsettling about her face, an openness that seemed almost naive in this city of locked doors and guarded expressions. "You understand the terms?" Damien began, sliding the contract across the marble table. $200,000 upon successful delivery of a healthy child. You'll receive the best medical care, a stipend for expenses, and housing if needed. In return, you carry my child to term and relinquish all parental rights immediately after birth. Holly's fingers trembled as she touched the papers. "I understand, Mr. Blackwell. This is purely transactional," he continued, his voice as flat as a legal document. "There will be no emotional attachment, no expectation of relationship beyond the medical necessity. You're providing a service. I'm paying for that service. Nothing more." Something flickered across her face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition of how cold his words sounded. But she nodded. "My brother Tommy, he has leukemia. The experimental treatment isn't covered by insurance. This money would save his life." Damien felt nothing at her explanation. Everyone had their reasons. Pain was universal currency. "The contract includes a confidentiality clause. You'll never contact me or the child after delivery. Any violation results in full repayment plus penalties." "I wouldn't," Holly said softly. "I'm not that kind of person." He almost laughed. Everyone was that kind of person when enough money was involved. He'd learned that lesson when his own mother had sold his childhood home to fund her third husband's failing business, leaving 12-year-old Damien to fend for himself in boarding schools. Marcus walked Holly through each clause, while Damien studied her reactions. She flinched at the medical procedures outlined, bit her lip during the lifestyle restrictions, but never wavered. When she finally signed her name, a careful, practiced signature that spoke of someone who'd learned to write well despite limited education, Damien felt only satisfaction at a deal completed. "We'll schedule the procedure for next week," Marcus said. "Any questions?" Holly looked directly at Damien for the first time, and he was struck by her eyes, clear gray, like morning fog. Will you want updates? About the pregnancy?" "Monthly reports from the doctor will suffice," he replied. "I don't require personal contact." She nodded slowly, gathering her coat. As she reached the door, she turned back. "Mr. Blackwell, I hope you'll be a good father. This baby deserves that." The door closed behind her, and Damien returned to the contract, already mentally filing this transaction under completed business. He had no way of knowing that the woman who'd just left would become the only person to ever breach the walls around his heart. Unexpected connections. Fourth month brought morning sickness that Holly described as feeling like I'm on a boat in a storm, and Damien found himself attending the doctor's appointment, despite having no intention to do so. "Dr. Patricia." Lowell raised an eyebrow when he walked into the examination room, but said nothing. Holly looked pale against the paper covering the exam table, her hand resting protectively over the small bump now visible beneath her sweater. When she saw him, surprise brightened her tired features. "Mr. Blackwell, I didn't expect—" "I was in the area," he lied. His office was 20 miles away. The ultrasound machine hummed to life, and suddenly there it was, a grainy image of something impossibly small yet unmistakably human. The baby moved, a flutter of motion that made Holly gasp with delight. "Strong heartbeat," Dr. Lowell announced. Everything looks perfect. Damien stared at the screen, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. This was his child, his legacy, yet it existed in the body of a woman who was essentially a stranger. The thought should have felt clean, transactional. Instead, it felt wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. After the appointment, Holly hesitated in the parking lot. Would you? There's a cafe nearby. I usually get tea there. If you wanted to talk about... I don't drink tea, Damien said automatically. Then, inexplicably, but I could eat. The cafe was nothing like the restaurants Damien frequented. No white tablecloths or prix-fixe menus, just worn booths and the smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. Holly ordered soup and bread with the care of someone counting every dollar, even though his stipend was generous. Tell me about your brother, Damien said, surprising himself. Holly's face transformed. Tommy's 15. He's so smart, Mr. Blackwell. He wants to be an engineer. Before he got sick, he'd build these elaborate structures out of anything, cardboard, toothpicks. Once he made a working bridge out of drinking straws. She pulled out her phone, showing him photos of a skinny boy with Holly's gray eyes and a brilliant smile. The treatment's working? Damien asked. So far, he's responding better than they hoped. Her eyes glistened. Because of you. Because of this. Damien shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't doing this for Tommy or for Holly. He was doing it for himself, for the heir he needed to secure his legacy. Yet her gratitude felt like a weight he hadn't anticipated carrying. What about you? Holly asked suddenly. Do you have family? No. The word came out harder than intended. I had a mother who taught me that love is just another word for leverage. Family is a liability I can't afford. Holly set down her spoon, studying him with those unsettling, clear eyes. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's practical. It's lonely. No one had ever said that to him before. Not his therapist. Not his few friends. Not the parade of women who'd wanted him for his money. The simple truth of it struck something deep and buried. Holly reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. I made you something. It's silly probably, but... Inside was a keychain, a tiny baby shoe crocheted from blue yarn. I don't know if it's a boy yet, Holly explained quickly, but blue seemed neutral enough. I thought, maybe you'd want something to remind you of why you're doing this. Damien held the small object, so light it barely registered weight. He couldn't remember the last time someone had made him something with their own hands. Expected nothing in return. Thank you, he managed. Over the following weeks, the doctor's appointments became something Damien scheduled around, then looked forward to. Holly would tell him stories about her childhood in a small town upstate, about her father who'd taught her to bake bread, about dreams she'd set aside to care for Tommy. She never asked about his wealth or his business. She asked instead about his favorite color, his first memory, whether he believed in second chances, and somehow, in those sterile examination rooms and cheap cafes, Damien began to remember what it felt like to be human. Holly's warmth was like sunlight on a man who'd lived in winter for so long he'd forgotten other seasons existed. She made him laugh, actually laugh, when she described the baby's kicks as practicing karate for the Olympics. The contract sat in his office safe, and with each passing week, it felt more like a lie. This wasn't a transaction anymore. This was something else entirely, something Damien had no name for and no defenses against. When walls crumble. The invitation sat on Damien's desk like an accusation. Holly's handwriting, careful block letters that spoke of elementary school teachers who'd insisted on proper penmanship, invited him to Thanksgiving dinner at her apartment. Nothing fancy, she'd written. Just Tommy, me, and whatever this baby wants me to cook. He should decline. The contract specified minimal personal contact. Yet Damien found himself standing outside her building on Thanksgiving evening, holding an expensive bottle of wine he immediately realized was inappropriate for a woman who couldn't drink it. Holly's apartment was smaller than his closet, a studio with a kitchen alcove and windows that overlooked a fire escape. But she'd transformed it into something that felt revolutionary to Damien, a home. Thanksgiving decorations made from construction paper hung on the walls. The scent of roasting turkey filled the small space with warmth. "Mr. Blackwell!" Tommy struggled up from the couch, thin but steady on his feet. His hair had started growing back in patches. "Holly said you probably wouldn't come." "I didn't think I would either," Damien admitted. Dinner was chaotic in ways Damien's precisely orchestrated life never allowed. Tommy talked enthusiastically about his latest project, a model rocket he planned to launch once he was stronger. Holly burned the rolls and laughed about it instead of spiraling into apologies. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes lumpy, and Damien couldn't remember ever enjoying a meal more. "Why did you want a baby?" Tommy asked with teenage bluntness. "Holly says you're not married." "Tommy." Holly's cheeks flushed pink. "That's private. It's all right." Damien set down his fork. "I'm 38. My company needs a legacy, someone to inherit what I've built. I thought having a child was logical. But who's going to teach them stuff?" Tommy pressed. "Like how to ride a bike or what to do when someone's mean to you at school?" "I'll hire qualified people." Tommy exchanged a look with Holly that Damien couldn't decipher. "That sounds lonely." "For you and the baby." Later, after Tommy had tired and gone to lie down, Holly brought Damien tea on her tiny balcony. The city glittered below them, beautiful and indifferent. "I didn't have a father," Holly said quietly. "He died when I was 8. But I remember him, really remember him. Not because of anything big or expensive. I remember how he'd dance with my mom in the kitchen, how he'd let me stand on his feet so I could dance too. How he knew I was scared of thunderstorms. So he'd tell me stories about cloud giants bowling until I laughed instead of cried." She touched her belly, where Damien's child grew. "This baby won't remember fancy toys or trust funds. They'll remember if you were there, if you saw them, if you loved them." "I don't know how to do that," Damien said, and the admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "Neither did my dad, probably. Neither does anyone. You just try. You show up." Something broke open in Damien's chest. All the years of carefully constructed walls crumbling like paper. "My mother left me at boarding school when I was 12. She'd remarried, wanted to start fresh. I saw her maybe twice a year after that, usually when she needed money." He'd never told anyone this, not even his therapist. "She died 3 years ago. I paid for the funeral. I didn't cry." Holly's hand found his in the darkness. Her fingers were warm, calloused from work. "And impossibly gentle. You're not your mother, Damien." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and hearing it in her soft voice felt like absolution. "I'm afraid," he whispered, "that I am. That I'll fail this child the way I was failed." "Then don't." Holly squeezed his hand. "Choose to be different. Choose to be better. Choose to be there." They sat in silence, hands intertwined while the city hummed below. Damien realized with stunning clarity that he'd fallen in love, not just with the woman beside him, but with the possibility she represented. The possibility that he could be more than his past, more than his money, more than the cold, efficient man he'd become. "Holly," he started, then stopped. The words felt too big, too terrifying. She smiled, understanding somehow. "I know, me too. And for the first time in 26 years, Damien Blackwell felt like he'd come home." The ultimate sacrifice. The call came at 2 in the morning. Dr. Lowell's voice was professional but urgent. "Holly's at Metropolitan Hospital. You need to come now." Damien broke every speed limit. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. The baby was only 7 months along, too early, too fragile. And Holly? He found Dr. Lowell outside the intensive care unit, her expression grave. "Holly developed Helpe syndrome. It's a severe complication. Her liver and blood are failing. We need to deliver the baby immediately, but—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "Holly's condition is critical. The delivery will put enormous strain on her body. There's a significant chance she won't survive it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Damien's feet. "Then don't. Save her." "We can try again." "The baby won't survive if we don't deliver now. And leaving the baby in will kill Holly anyway, just slower." Tommy sat in the waiting room, his face pale and frightened. "She made me call you first before the ambulance even came." Damien pushed into Holly's room. She looked impossibly small against the white sheets, monitors beeping around her like mechanical heartbeats. Her face was swollen, but her eyes, those clear gray eyes, focused on him with perfect clarity. "Hey," she whispered. "Glad you came. Holly, listen to me." Damien took her hand, barely registering how cold it felt. "Let them save you. The baby. We can figure something else out. But I can't lose you. I won't." She smiled, and it broke his heart. "Remember what I said? About choosing to be different? To be better." Her other hand rested on her belly. "This baby is already loved. Already wanted. They deserve their chance. So do you." "I've had 27 years, Damien. Good years, hard years, but mine. This little one hasn't had anything yet." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Promise me you'll tell them about me. Not the contract or the money, but that I wanted them. That I loved them before I ever met them." "You're going to tell them yourself," Damien insisted, but his voice cracked. "Promise me." Dr. Lowell entered with her team. "Holly, we need your consent." "We have to move now." Holly squeezed Damien's hand with surprising strength. "Take care of them. Both of them. The baby and Tommy. Promise me, Damien." "I promise. But you're going to be fine." "You have to be fine because—" His voice broke completely. "Because I love you. Because you taught me how to be human again, and I can't do this without you." Holly's eyes widened, then softened with such tenderness that Damien felt his heart shatter and heal simultaneously. "I love you too. I think I have since that first day when you pretended you didn't care, but you wore that little blue shoe on your keychain anyway." They wheeled her towards surgery, and Damien followed until a nurse gently stopped him. Through the closing doors, he heard Holly call out, "Choose to be there, Damien. Choose to be better." The surgery lasted 4 hours. Damien didn't sit, didn't eat, didn't do anything except pace and pray to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. Tommy cried silently beside him. Marcus arrived at dawn, offering support Damien couldn't acknowledge. When Dr. Lowell finally emerged, still in surgical scrubs, Damien couldn't breathe. "She's alive," the doctor said, and Damien's knees nearly buckled. "Critical but stable. The next 24 hours are crucial. She's a fighter, Mr. Blackwell. The baby? A girl, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Small but strong. She's in the NICU." Dr. Lowell's expression softened. "She has her mother's determination." Damien looked at his daughter through the NICU glass, a tiny, perfect creature surrounded by wires and monitors. She was impossibly small, impossibly fragile, impossibly beautiful, and she was alive because Holly had chosen to give her that chance. He pressed his hand against the glass. "Your mother saved you," he whispered. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you both know how much that means." A family reborn spring arrived like a promise kept. Holly sat in the garden behind Damien's estate, their estate now, watching their daughter take wobbly steps across the grass. Rose, they'd named her, for Holly's mother and for the way she'd bloomed despite such a difficult beginning. "Mama!" Rose squealed, falling into Holly's waiting arms. At 15 months, she was small for her age, but fierce, just like the woman who'd fought so hard to bring her into the world. Damien emerged from the house with Tommy, both carrying trays laden with the evidence of their attempt at making lunch. "We made sandwiches," Tommy announced proudly. He was 17 now, healthy and thriving, already accepted to engineering programs at 3 universities. "Did you, or did Mrs. Chen rescue you halfway through?" Holly teased. "Mrs. Chen supervised," Damien corrected with mock dignity. "We were fully in control. The past year had transformed them all." Holly's recovery had been slow, painful, marked by setbacks that terrified Damien every time. But she'd survived, grown stronger, and taught him that strength came in forms he'd never imagined. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the quiet determination to heal, to hope, to keep loving even when love felt terrifying. The contract remained in Damien's office safe, but he'd never opened it after that night in the hospital. 6 months ago, he'd taken it out with Holly beside him, and they'd burned it together in the fireplace, watching the legal language that had brought them together turn to ash. "I have something for you," Damien said now, pulling a small box from his pocket. Holly raised an eyebrow. "If that's another necklace, I'm running out of places to wear them all." "Open it." Inside was a key, old-fashioned brass tied with a blue ribbon. Holly looked at him questioningly. "It's to a bakery," Damien explained. "Downtown, near where we had our first coffee. The lease came up for sale, and I thought, maybe you'd want to start that business you told me about. The one you dreamed of before Tommy got sick." Holly's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time. "Damien, that's too much. It's not enough." "It'll never be enough for what you've given me." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. Rose toddled over, plopping herself in his lap with complete trust. "You gave me a daughter. You gave me a family. You gave me back my heart. Let me give you your dream." Tommy cleared his throat loudly. "Also, I helped pick out the location, and I'm going to help design the kitchen layout for my engineering portfolio. So really, you'd be helping me." Holly laughed through her tears, pulling them all close. Damien, Rose, Tommy, a family assembled from broken pieces and impossible choices, held together by something the contract had never accounted for: love. "There's one more thing," Damien said softly. From his other pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not the massive diamond he could afford, but a simple gold band with 3 small stones: a ruby, an emerald, and a diamond. "Red for Rose, green for growth, and diamond for forever," he explained. "Holly Bennett, you saved my daughter." "You saved me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you?" Rose clapped her hands, understanding nothing except that everyone was happy. Tommy grinned. And Holly, beautiful, kind, impossible Holly, smiled with all the warmth that had first drawn Damien to her in that cold conference room so long ago. "Yes," she whispered. "But only if you promise to keep making terrible sandwiches and showing up and choosing us every single day." "Every single day," Damien promised. "For the rest of my life." They married in the garden that summer, surrounded by the family they'd created from nothing. Holly wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Rose toddled down the aisle, dropping petals everywhere except where they belonged. Tommy walked Holly to Damien, then took his place as best man. And when Damien kissed his wife, his partner, his love, his home, he tasted salt from happy tears and thought about that blue crocheted shoe that still hung on his keychain. A reminder of the day a simple kindness had changed everything. "I love you," he whispered against Holly's lips. "I know," she whispered back. "You show me every day." Rose tugged on Damien's leg. "Dada up!" He lifted his daughter, feeling her small arms wrap around his neck with absolute trust. Holly leaned against his shoulder, and Tommy stood beside them. And Damien understood finally what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not an heir. Not a transaction. Not a cold, efficient solution to mortality. But this: a family built on love, sacrifice, and the daily choice to be better than yesterday. A family that had saved him just as surely as he'd thought he was saving them, and for the man who'd once believed love was just another word for leverage, that was everything.